All right, everybody. Welcome to the Process Safety Leadership Challenge. How to systematically strengthen process safety leadership without site pushback, policy overwhelm, or hiring additional personnel by Safe Energy Ops. We're very excited to have you here. We understand your time is very, very valuable, and we want to make sure that we make use of that time and add value to you, your site, your business, and your process safety leadership journey. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, who this is for? This is really for process safety management leaders. Okay, and that's not necessarily talking about a job role or a job title. If you are on a site that has a process safety management drive, then this is for you. Okay, this is for operations supervisors, people that are leading teams on site that manage risk, manage hazards, industrial processes. This is for you. Okay. And then also for safety advisors, those people that have niched down and providing consultation, safety support locally to the site and drive the safety agenda for the site. You want to stick till the end to make sure that you get the most benefit out of this free challenge, free training presentation today. And then operations consultants, folks that consult across different companies, different sectors around process safety, and site support engineers, folks that are engineers in the day-to-day supporting site team members and the rest of the staff to drive the PSM agenda forward. So we look forward to serving you. If this is you, or closely related to these categories, we think that you're going to find a lot of value and takeaways from this challenge. Okay, so our goals from this challenge are the following. First of all, we're going to explain how to reduce process safety risk by focusing on process safety leadership. We're going to explain how to influence upper management and the site, even if you're not a senior manager. So you may not be a senior manager, but you can still influence your process safety culture in your site. And we want to provide a clear roadmap to strengthen process safety leadership at your site, give you an A to Z blueprint that you can actually use in your site to move the agenda forward. Okay. And then we want to help you highlight focus areas for your site's process safety leadership needs. Okay. So that's our goals. That's our promise from this challenge. It's going to be a 4-day challenge. It only, takes about 45 minutes or so per day with some key takeaways. And that's what we hope. This is our goals for you and this exercise. Okay. And, obviously we want you to walk away with actionable steps. Theory is great and all, but without actionable steps, we can't really make a change. We can't really make an impact. Okay. So let's go ahead and kind of dive in. First of all, we'll do a little bit of intro. My name is Joel Aponte. I'm a PE out of Texas. I currently live in Puerto Rico, but most of my career wasn't supporting, from Texas, and that's where I'm licensed at. I've got 12 plus years of process safety and ops, experience, mainly with integrated oil and gas company, both some assignments onshore and vast majority offshore. And I was a member of an award winning team regarding process safety improvement and leadership. Okay. And then I'll present Felipe, who's our co-founder here. Felipe, why don't you give the audience here a little bit of an intro of yourself?
Sure. So Felipe Rendon, also from Texas, also chemical engineering background, 11 plus years with process safety operations experience with a integrated oil and gas company as well. Mostly offshore as well, like Joel. I did spend 3 years as a site-based operations supervisor. That was my last role offshore on that in the industry. And I was part of the same award-winning process safety improvement team as Joel, where we really gained some valuable firsthand on-the-ground experience with implementing changes to the process safety culture and strengthening process safety leadership at a major site offshore. So great experience that we'd like to really share with all of you in hopes that we can make an impact on process safety multiple sites, multiple industries.
Absolutely. Well, welcome everybody. That's a little bit about us. Thank you, Felipe, for sharing that. So what we're going to be covering Okay, so day one is going to be all about introduction to the Safe Energy Ops Process Safety Leadership Framework. I'll repeat that again. Process Safety Leadership Framework. We believe that our focus area, our core competence here is helping sites push forward their process safety leadership so that they can drive the process safety management agenda in the conversations. Day two is going to be about our align phase. We believe that this is crucial and essential, is how to get relevant stakeholders to buy into a vision of improved process safety. We surveyed a couple people, and that seems to be one of the biggest bottlenecks, or at least one of the biggest obstacles. And us also living through this, we understand that this is foundational. So that's what day two is going to be about on this challenge. Day three is going to be about empowering, right? After you get alignment from different stakeholders that drive the PSM agenda on a site, is about empowering them on how to use process safety leadership to empower the workforce to actually, works towards a stronger process safety culture, right? Keeping that positive reinforcement. How do you actually do that step by step? And then day four is going to be about sustaining. So obviously we're going to drive a change and impact for the, for the well-being, for the process safety culture in a site. We want to make sure that it lasts, that it's sustainable. And so we're going to be talking about the key steps on how to sustain strong process safety leadership and culture at your site. So without further ado, let's talk about, dive into, the introduction to the framework, the process safety leadership framework for Safe Energy Ops here. So one of the reasons why we're passionate about process safety is, as I had hinted before, in our experience, despite being a critical factor in preventing major accidents, loss of life, loss of equipment, loss of business, through process safety incidents, process safety leadership is often not emphasized enough at sites on the day-to-day. It's often seen as a hindsight 2020, kind of, after the aftermath. And so we want to take a proactive approach around process safety leadership. We have experienced firsthand how improving the culture and the leadership that drives that can result in better management of process safety and risk, and just overall a smoother running facility with higher revenue margins. We've seen that firsthand and how that works and how those transformations actually take place. And we feel the need to share our lessons learned with process safety communities, really just in hope that it adds value, that reduces the risk, reduces the events, and improve site culture and reliability on the sites, and just overall a better place to work at, and a smoother place to work and a safer place to work at. Okay, so let's talk about kind of what is process safety leadership to make sure that we're aligned on the definition. It prioritizes process safety on a daily basis, not just when we're doing HAZOP, LOPAs, not just when we're doing any major risk accident evaluations, but more importantly, on a day-to-day basis, how we talk about process safety. We exemplify the right process safety behaviors, again, on the day-to-day, not just on one-off events or one-off assessments. And understanding the process safety policies and regulations and applying them consistently is key. Okay. Also verifying the process safety policies are being followed instead of assuming, right? Trust but verify is something that we often see and hear. And having the courage to actually stop the operation, stop the production, stop the revenue, to understand, that maybe we're not adequately protected against a process safety risk that may cost us a whole lot more, than just a shutdown, actually stopping the job, and which is different than personnel safety. Okay, so inspiring a team towards, having a strong why to have those conversations, maybe some of those uncomfortable conversations that need to happen, that we all need to happen. We all know that need to happen. So hopefully this inspires us to have those more frequently. Okay, and just recognizing the long-term benefits of a strong PSM program versus prioritizing short-term, profits, revenue, uptime, whatever you may want to call it. So let's review some process safety incidents from history. At this point, I'll pass it on to Felipe here to allow us to kind of reflect on process safety leadership from previous incidents and how we can relate to those.
All right. So see here. So as Joel said, we'll be going through these incidents from history, taking a look at how critical process safety leadership is to get it in everyone's mind as to why we're so passionate about it and what we're trying to help with. So first up's Piper Alpha. Piper Alpha was in the North Sea. Is an offshore platform in the North Sea, and it unfortunately is not letting me progress the slides, Joel. So sorry about that. It occurred on July 6th, 1988, resulted in 165 casualties, which is the majority of the personnel on board. It occurred because a condensate pump failed, one of two parallel pumps. The other pump had been isolated during the day for maintenance. It was the night shift crew that encountered the failure of the second pump. So once the second pump failed, the night shift crew restarted pump A, the first pump, without proper review, unfortunately resulting in a release of condensate from a loose fitted blind flange. What then resulted was fire and explosion, loss of life, as you can see in the picture there, a very tragic event. And rescue attempts were hindered by the intense fire, which only further escalated the loss of life. So from the public inquiry into the Piper Alpha disaster by the UK's Department of Energy, the findings included 2 permits were tied to condensate pump A maintenance, but the permits were not properly filed, nor was the status of the work communicated at shift handover. So those of you that are familiar with shift work, are familiar with 24-hour operations, you understand how critical shift handover is. And it is a very, very important part of process safety management. It's an administrative part, but it's very, very important. In this case, the shift handover process was not followed appropriately, and it was a critical barrier that did not perform as it needed to that night. The night shift crew was not aware that the relief valve had been removed from condensate pump, the condensate pump that had been isolated, and was replaced by a loose fitted flange. So again, the night shift crew, under pressure to restart condensate pump to prevent a shut-in of the facility and loss of production, they assumed that the pump that had been isolated during the day by the day shift crew had not yet undergone work and had only been isolated and prepped for maintenance. They were not aware that actually the relief valve had been removed and it had been replaced by a loose fitted blind flange. So it wasn't torqued to the full piping specification, meaning if it encountered pressure, then it was not going to hold the fluid. The permit to work process on Piper Alpha, as revealed by the investigation, was often not correctly followed. There were findings from previous near misses, previous incidents that almost happened that revealed that the permit to work process was often not correctly followed. This is where you start to see the leadership, the process safety leadership culture, the process safety leadership come into play. As you have these findings and you don't make corrections and you don't adjust the level of priority placed on these critical process safety barriers, it is a failure in leadership. Emergency response was also lacking, again, showing process safety leadership lacking the recognition of the importance of making sure everyone knew what to do in the event of an emergency. And management had actually been warned a year prior that due to lack of protection against fire exposure, gas risers were susceptible to failure and further escalation in the event of a fire. So you had warnings that there was a vulnerability here and there was failure to take corrective action. So what were the ways process safety leadership was lacking in this incident at Piper Alpha? Inadequate review of the layers of protection before starting up condensate pump A. Before you perform an activity, ideally, your workforce, your operators, your technicians are going to take a pause and they're going to stop and ask, what can go wrong here? They're going to assess their layers of protection that stand between them and the consequence of what can go wrong. If there are any gaps in those layers of protection, they're going to fix them. And if they cannot fix the gap sufficiently, they should escalate as needed. We call this a safe pause. We'll be going through this in future sessions. In this case, the safe pause was not performed. The pressure of getting condensate pump operations back running took precedent over proper review of the layers of protection. More priority was placed on maintaining production than verifying process safety safeguards were in place, as I just went over. A lack of understanding of process safety policies and why they're important. Specifically, we're talking here about shift handover practices and permit to work practices. The fact that there had been previous incidents, recognitions that the process was not being followed gives us the impression that why those policies are important, what's really behind them, was lacking. And without process safety leadership explaining that, driving that, then it's going to be sort of combed over and left to the side. Lack of communication around job status and how one person's work could affect others. You're going to hear us talk about culture of care. Culture of care is a foundational motivator and reason for people to take the necessary time and attention and energy and put it behind process safety management. We as human beings, Joel and I have found this applied in the field. We as human beings often are more motivated to take care of those around us than necessarily look out for ourselves. That's kind of the human nature. And if we take the mindset of I'm protecting my fellow worker, I'm protecting my coworker, my friend, then we are more apt to do the steps, take the time to cross the T's and dot the I's when it comes to process safety. And so in this case, if that culture had been established and someone said, you know what, I'm not comfortable starting up this pump because I feel too pressured, we don't have enough information, we don't know the status that the day shift left us, we need to stop and take the time, perhaps that could have avoided this incident. So Piper Alpha, we saw several examples of a lack of process safety leadership. And I want to take a second and stress that here at Safe Energy Ops, our focus is process safety leadership. In these incidents that we are reviewing, there are going to be engineering design flaws. There are going to be technical aspects of how work was performed that are critical and essential to preventing these accidents from happening. Whether that's the torque specification for the blind flange in the case of Piper Alpha, or even the details in the shift handover and permit to work procedures that need to be updated. Those things have to happen. Our point is that without process safety leadership, even the strongest administrative barriers are susceptible to holes. The holes forming in them because at the end of the day, it's people that uphold the strength of those barriers, that make sure that they're implemented, that make sure they're maintained, and that create the environment and the culture that's going to allow for things to be revealed, hazards to be revealed, and the right steps to be taken to mitigate those hazards. In our next example, we go to the space industry with the Challenger space shuttle tragedy, which occurred on January 28th, 1986. The field assembly joint in one of the solid rocket boosters failed due to eroded O-rings. Leaking fuel from the joint caused the shuttle to catch fire and explode. Unfortunately, all 7 astronauts were killed and the shuttle was completely destroyed. From the report of the Presidential Commission on the Space Shuttle Challenger accident, the findings included erosion of the field assembly joint O-rings had been noticed as early as 2 years prior to the last launch. So O-ring erosion was nothing new on the day of this accident. It had been seen, it had been noticed, and it had been discussed. Erosion of the O-rings was initially viewed with concern, but over time, since it had not escalated to any further impact, it came to be seen as normal, leading to what's been called normalization of deviance. This accident made this term very popular. It's used in many industries now, normalization of deviance. This is basically becoming familiar and numb to an anomaly, so much so that it just becomes normal and overlooked and part of everyday work. So in this case, erosion of the O-rings became normalized. Despite several engineers' awareness that the O-rings are susceptible to greater erosion at lower temperatures, concern about the low temperature on launch day was dismissed by middle management, and concerns were not escalated to senior management at NASA. This really speaks to the culture. The culture at NASA, at its subcontractors on the project. There are many reports that have come out about this tragedy that describe the nature of the culture, where instead of proving that launch was safe, instead you almost had to prove that launch was unsafe. So process safety leadership is key to creating a culture where people have authority and they feel like they have the ability to speak up when something doesn't look right, when something needs to be looked into further. In this case, there was knowledge that on lower temperatures, the erosion was greater. And on this specific day, there was low temperature, concerns were raised, and it was stopped halfway up because of the pressure of staying on schedule and avoiding further delays. Ways process safety leadership was lacking in this event. Greater concern for meeting launch schedules than having full confidence in safety barriers. I just discussed that, and reading the reports, you can see pressure to meet schedule overcame the priority of making sure process safety barriers were in place. Ignoring leading indicators because no further impacts had yet been observed. In this case, the leading indicator was the O-ring erosion. It had been noticed in previous launches, but because nothing further had happened, it became normalized. Leading before the event, before the consequence, lagging after the consequence. And you always, in process safety, always want to pay attention to your leading indicators, because that's where you want to stop the problem, was before it happens, not once something has happened and you're trying to reduce essentially the impact of the consequence at that point. Normalization of deviance. We discussed becoming numb to anomalies, seeing it day after day. I know Joel and I have both experienced this on complex facilities where you have lots of equipment, you have lots of, let's call them issues that need attention. And over time, if nothing is done, but it doesn't exactly escalate to anything further, it's easy, I'll say, without the right leadership culture in place, to just become numb to those things, because they've been there for weeks, they've been there for months, maybe even years. Nothing's happened yet, and you begin to get a false sense of security that nothing will happen. But of course, that's not the mindset we want to have. Dismissing concerns of those closest to the project and failure to escalate. Again, what kind of culture is being set here? Where do people feel like they have the courage and authority to raise their voice, and is it going to be taken seriously or just dismissed? Complacency, discussed with normalization of deviance. Everything will go as it always does, which is fine, right? That's not the mindset we want to have. We always want to maintain a chronic sense of unease, and we have to rely on our process safety leaders to promote that chronic sense of unease and that vigilance around process safety hazards. Our final example today comes from the Gulf of Mexico with the Deepwater Horizon explosion. Occurred on April 20th, 2010, resulted in 11 casualties, 17 major injuries. an 87-day oil spill, almost 5 million barrels, which is the largest in United States history. In a summary, the Deepwater Horizon lost control of the Macondo well that it was drilling due to well integrity failure, a blowout, and a failure of the BOP, the blowout preventer, to seal the well. Hydrocarbon released on the rig, and a fire and explosion resulted, which caused the loss of life. From the United States Coast Guard report of investigation into the Deepwater Horizon and the BP Deepwater Horizon accident investigation reports, the annulus cement barrier and chute track cement failed to stop the reservoir hydrocarbons from entering the production casing riser. So essentially, in a well being drilled, of course, barriers must be put in place in the form of cement, both around the well and at the bottom, to prevent hydrocarbons from backflowing back up to the drilling rig, particularly when the drilling rig is going to temporarily abandon the well and move off of the well so it can drill at another location, and the well then waits for production. Investigation revealed that these barriers failed. Before the drilling rig leaves the well, it performs a negative pressure test to prove that the barriers are working properly and hydrocarbons will not reverse flow. The negative pressure test results, despite indications of flow path communication with the reservoir, which indicate a failure to achieve well integrity, they were accepted. Now, 2 tests were performed. The first one was inconclusive. The second one was accepted. Now, none of us were there that day. None of us were privy to the conversations. There is testimony in these reports that indicate that there was pressure, as there usually is, to meet schedule, to meet budget, and to move forward. Your process safety leadership has to be strong enough to maintain assurance of process safety barriers, no matter the increased cost, the impact of schedule, because a process safety leader knows the consequences, the long-term consequences of not doing so are far, far greater than the short-term repercussions of taking more time. Rig personnel did not recognize the signs of hydrocarbon influx from the well until hydrocarbons had flowed past the BOP and into the riser. Now, the process safety culture, is going to prioritize information and training to the right personnel on what to do in different hazardous situations. When you're drilling a well, one of the most hazardous situations you can come into contact with is reverse flow at a time when you are not controlling the flow or ready to handle those hydrocarbons. And you're going to want to make sure that your workforce knows exactly what to do in those situations, how to recognize that it's happening. The investigation revealed the rig personnel did not recognize for approximately 40 minutes that there was backflow into the riser. Rig personnel response actions to control the well, once they realized that there was backflow of hydrocarbons, were insufficient and inappropriate. The well was not shut in time. Fluids were routed to a mud gas separator instead of overboard, which caused gas to be dispersed throughout the rig instead of possibly just dispersed over the water. Several safety systems were in bypass, failure to activate ESD on gas detection, which may have prevented a second, more severe explosion. Now, it's always easier after an event to go back in hindsight and say what should have been done. They should have done this, they should have done that. Joel and I have both been in very tense, high-paced environments, high-paced situations. And when you're in the middle of those situations, of course, it's faster. You don't have exactly the time in the world and all the information at your fingertips as you do after the event. That is precisely why process safety training, culture, leadership is critical, so critical in these events. You do not want to simply rely on whatever comes to mind. You want to rely on what has been ingrained in the mind of your operators, of your technicians, of your employees, of your workforce. And you want to have that culture that says that's going to cause the operator or the driller to say, I'm going to go this route, the safe route. I'm going to take these steps to go to the safest place possible. We've already talked through this. I know that it's a priority, and I know my leadership's going to have my back if I go this route. And you don't want them to have to think, what step should I take to avoid repercussions because I shut something down and caused a delay of production or schedule, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for that. So we start to see in these events how culture, how process safety leadership is so critical and why we're so passionate about it. The blowout preventer failed to seal the well. Investigation revealed that the maintenance and testing program was not executed properly on this very, very, very critical device for drilling operations. Again, process safety leadership is not going to allow a critical safety device it's going to place importance and priority on making sure that its operation is verified. In this case, the 3 different methods for it to work, and they all failed. So I've already talked through, but to summarize process safety leadership and how it was lacking in this incident. Negative pressure test results were accepted despite indications of backflow from the well. Despite the high-risk nature of well temporary abandonment, rig personnel vigilance and understanding of signs of a well kick were lacking. Insufficient training of rig crew on how to best route well kickback fluids, actions to perform when gas detected, and other emergency responses. Electrical equipment in classified areas not properly maintained, creating potential ignition sources. This is one I hadn't hit on. When gas was released and hydrocarbons were released on the drilling rig, it's likely that the gas found an ignition source in equipment that is supposed to be rated for classified areas, but had not been properly maintained. So what that means is electrical equipment designed for a certain area where it might come into contact with flammable gases or liquids should be designed such that there is nothing exposed to create an ignition source. In this case, investigation revealed findings from previous inspections that showed that there was a lack of maintenance, and electrical equipment likely didn't meet that classification because of the lack of maintenance. This all leads back to what is the culture, what is the priority that's being set by leadership in terms of process safety, and do people understand why, the why behind performing the maintenance on this equipment to make sure that it works properly as designed. According to testimony, when the on-watch subsea supervisor claimed he was going to initiate the emergency disconnect system, the master and on-site well leader pushed back and told him not to. This is perhaps one of the most obvious signs of a inappropriate process safety leadership, and someone raising concern, wanting to take action, and being told not to because the more important thing was to make sure that production costs were not sacrificed instead of making sure process safety was prioritized. Finally, significant gaps in the maintenance and testing program, the BAP, which I mentioned. So, Safe Energy Ops Leadership Framework is our framework and blueprint to strengthen process safety at your site. And I'm going to let Joel take back over here to go over the framework and take us home for today.
Yep. So, yeah, well, thank you, Felipe, for taking us through those case studies. I hope the audience is enjoying this very detailed breakdown. And as we can see, the common thread across these 3 examples is not having a strong enough process safety leadership culture. And so what we found, the journey that we're going to take you through, is what we found to work in multiple sites, multiple different locations and operations, is mainly 9 key steps that are broken down in 3 phases. And for the rest of the 3 days that we're going to be doing this challenge on, it's going to be very interactive. You're going to get access to download not only the cheat sheets, but we're going to be asking you to share with the community, share with the group, kind of what your key takeaways are. And also at the end of this challenge, hopefully you walk away with a clear assessment as to where you're at and maybe some areas to work on and focus on, improve on. Okay. And so here's the process safety leadership framework from Safe Energy Ops. And as I mentioned, and we mentioned earlier, it's composed of align is the first phase, getting that alignment. Second is empowering the site team members and all the stakeholders to moving forward and getting the right behavior set in place. And always be thinking about, being in the proactive side versus the reactive side. And then, sustainability, making sure that it is captured and that it is progressed for the long term. Okay. So with that said, what the framework is, let's kind of talk about what it is. It's a structured plan for strengthening process safety leadership at a site. Okay. It's a strategy for process safety leadership to improve process safety culture. Okay. And it's methodologies for sustaining process safety leadership and culture. We just want to make sure that it's crystal clear as to what it is. It is a framework that we've seen be put in place to address a big need and a big gap in the industry as we see, still seeing incidents, right? And we want to point out what it is not, right? What it is not. And so that is, it's not a substitute for technical hazard and risk management training. This is not what we're covering in detail here. It's not a training on local regulatory requirements, okay? This is a framework for process safety leadership and culture. So a couple of the doubts that we've seen around improving, getting on a journey to increase process safety leadership, improving it on a site. Maybe there's like no site buy-in, there's site pushback. The Safe Energy Ops framework is meant to teach you how to achieve alignment between all the stakeholders, as we mentioned. That's what phase 1 is all about. And it's done through establishing a clear safety case. And this is exactly what we're going to be diving deep into tomorrow. A clear, articulated, and inspiring vision for the future, so that everybody is, aligned, right, with kind of where we're at, the vision that is inspiring everybody, and then how do we collaborate? Because oftentimes our sites are remote. We have support team members located across the globe. And so there are some key communication challenges that need to be addressed early on in the process to reduce and eliminate frustration. The other one is getting site burnout or overwhelm, the ever-changing agenda of the company or the new initiatives or the new procedure. We've seen how it may drive morale down on a site. The framework does not require additional policies or personnel. The focus is on the strategy, is the habits and behaviors needed to strengthen process safety leadership and the culture in a systematic way, so that it doesn't feel like an added load to the workforce or just a one-off, initiative. It's made in a sustainable way. Okay. And, many fear that, hey, well, if I do this management of change or I start this initiative, it'll just go away. So why even do it in the first place? So because we are doing it in a way that is getting alignment, empowering the site, we want to make sure we tie all that together with the passion, with the drive of caring for each other, and a strong reason for why we're doing it, right? And, what we've seen is that is the wrapper to all of this, to drive this for the long term as part of the culture of the site, and not just another initiative that gets there. Okay. So let's talk about maybe what we have covered today. We've covered why process safety leadership. Like, why even talk about it? Why even develop a framework, a strategy, right? And I think we've covered that today because it seems to be the common thread across a lot of incidents, and it seems to be the driver for the culture that gets it right. We covered what do we define as process safety leadership, and it's about actually having the culture to speak up, having a strong why, and being able to have those conversations around stopping the job in regards to process safety, not necessarily only personal safety, and having those root cause conversations as well. And then we spoke about examples from industry on the importance of process safety leadership in preventing major accidents. So obviously we reviewed 3 examples as to making the point of why process safety leadership is a focus area and should be a focus area for every site. So we did introduce the Safe Energy Ops Leadership Framework. I'll make sure to leave a link so that you can download it, print it, share with a colleague, a friend, a coworker, have a team conversation around these. We're going to be providing some quote unquote homework so that you can do the exercise and get the most value out of this challenge. And we spoke about the common doubts, faced when trying to improve process safety leadership and how they can be overcome. So with that said, on the Kajabi community, make a post in the process safety leadership challenge circle. And I'll share my screen here a little bit, and go ahead and just go ahead and list 5 obstacles that you think may be standing in the way of process safety leadership becoming stronger at your site. Again, this is 100% free challenge. The idea is to get the gears going so that you get the most out of it. Okay. And us as a community of process safety leaders, participants, supporters, it's important to kind of share what we're seeing and share lessons learned. And that's all part of the challenge, right? That's why it is a challenge. Okay. So make sure to download Safe Energy Ops Leadership Framework. Again, I'll leave a link in our wrap-up post in the community. Okay. And with that said, tomorrow we're going to be covering the Align 1 phase 1 of the process safety leadership framework, where we're going to be talking much deeper around establishing a safety case, articulating a vision that inspires, and setting up the collaboration channels. Let me see here if we got, so here's some references. I just wanted to share my screen real quick because in the community, okay, right here in the free process safety leadership challenge community is where you can make a post. Go ahead and share. If you want to join us on these live meetings, you can do so in the meetup section right here, where we provide the Zoom link right here. And just to give you a little bit of a preview, we have a process safety leadership dashboard that we're going to be covering later on in this challenge. So the idea is that you walk out of this challenge with a clear agenda of what to focus on for your site, and along with the resources that we're providing you, hopefully it adds value to you, to your site and your business. All right, so we hope to see your posts in there. We hope to see you participate. Again, share with a colleague, share with a friend. If at any point you feel inclined to schedule a strategy call, I'll also leave the link there so that in case you want our help improving your process safety leadership culture in your site, you can schedule a strategy call with us, and we can go over and look at what's going on and see if we can help the process safety leadership conversation move forward in your site. That's it for me. Felipe, I don't know if you have any parting words for today's process safety leadership challenge session.
Hopefully you understand now why we care so much about process safety leadership. Our experience has really shown us that it's key, it's critical, it's the factor that's going to make the difference in sustainable process safety risk management at a site. And hopefully you stick around for the next 3 days as we go into detail on our 3 phases, our approach to bettering process safety leadership culture. And hope to see you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Take care. Bye-bye.